Hi, so I'm here to discuss the film Weapons today, because I wanted to share my own take, my own interpretation, which is quite different, I think, from what I've seen and heard so far. So my overall impression, to begin with, is that I predicted that I would feel much as I did about Barbarian. So with Barbarian, I enjoyed it. I do think the first two acts should have been switched around. So we see Justin Long's character first, and he's like, "What's? Why are these bags here?" Before we then have the two, Bill Skarsgård and that meeting in the Airbnb, because I think that would have been a bit more interesting. Um, but I did like the beginning of the film, and I think that the suspense worked well and playing with expectations. I didn't really buy into the twist. I think there's quite a tonal imbalance there. I know some people really like that. I do think it takes away from rewatchability though, because first time you're surprised and then you know what's happening next. And I predicted that he would do the same thing with Weapons. I think he did. It was very much like really interesting opening. I really liked the beginning of the film, and it was very tense. And that's not to say that I wasn't laughing at the ending, because obviously it's a very funny. But again, the tonal imbalance didn't quite work for me personally. I'm really happy that people are enjoying it. Don't get me wrong, but for me it didn't quite work, and they felt like two very different films. And I would have liked things to be a bit more open ended. I am that kind of person when it comes to horror where I like the mystery to be there, and I think we could still have kept some weird things in there, which are kind of funny, like when the door opens and we see the mother like zombieing her way through with the scissors and getting into the car, like that whole bit, that worked for me, and I don't think we needed to explain it. And I thought it was better. And he can have this whole thing, this whole backstory in his mind, but I don't think he needs to show it all. Um, but that's just a personal thought. So yeah, it was very much true to the prediction that I had, where there would be that really horrible, tense beginning that builds dread, and then it kind of just loses it. Um, and I know that others have liked it more than me, and that was much the same with Barbarian. So that's just a personal thing. So in terms of the meanings behind the film, though, it is really quite a gift for people who like to analyse, because there's so much that you can pick up from it. And Creggers has already discussed his inspiration, and Ryan Hollinger and Lucas Blue have done really good videos where they talk more about this idea of like substance abuse, alcoholism, grief. A lot of people have talked about school shooting metaphors, so I don't really want to pick up on those things, even though they are kind of there. I think there are kind of holes in that. So, for example, with like Aunt Gladys representing alcoholism, for example, um, she doesn't really have any kind of allure whatsoever, which is um, kind of a key part in alcoholism, is there has to be an allure there. And people can say, oh well, she's kind of fun and quirky, but like she's unsettling the whole time. She's unsettling the whole time. So that metaphor doesn't fully work for me in terms of like reading as a whole. My reading centers more on childhood. So Alex is key to this. And by the way, the actor in Alex's role was brilliant. I thought he did a really, really good job all the way through. So Aunt Gladys arrives, and she's this unfamiliar family member. It's not really explained in the film if they're actually related. We think she's more of a parasite who latches on and takes the life force of others, hence the recurring image of the parasite. But if we take her as kind of a representation of um, family, especially in like a childhood setting, there are family members, especially as children, that you find abnormal and unfamiliar, and that's scary. And they appear grotesque to you. Now I say this because of how I felt as a child, and I remember feeling that way. And since having grown up, I don't feel that way about family members now. But there were, I remember at that time when I was younger, I felt unsettled by certain family members. I didn't understand them. I didn't know them very well. They were unfamiliar to me, so it felt quite alien. And we obviously, with her, we have this grotesque, heightened appearance that I think reflects those naive childhood impressions of people, particularly family, and how we are scared of them as children. And you know, her, even like her clown-like makeup is all linked to childhood fears. Like we know it's quite a common thing for children to be scared of clowns, and that is all woven into her appearance. And I think this goes further when we see that the parents are acting differently when she's around. Now, obviously, in the film, they are literally like under a spell. But again, you know, as a child, sometimes, you know, a certain person, a certain family member comes into the picture, changes the dynamic entirely. And that is unsettling as a child. You see, like, oh, my mum's behaving weird, my mum's acting differently based on the fact that this person's here now. And that's something as small as like when I was a kid, we have some family in Liverpool, so we go over to Liverpool, and my mum kind of unconsciously mimicked the Scouse accent. It's like that's a small example, but you can see where I'm going with this. That you know, the people that are familiar to you start to change and become unfamiliar to you. There's bits of them there, but it's not the same, and I think that reflects that real life feeling. And then obviously, like, the film is so ludicrous and it goes off on such a tangent that I think that you can only really interpret this in like a childhood kind of lens. As a teacher who's worked with students from a range of ages, um, if you read a kid's story, especially younger children or those who don't write a lot, um, there isn't really a sense of craft. It just kind of goes like this happens, this happens, this happens. Ludicrous events are happening. Things go mad, and like it's just like whatever imagination splurges onto the page. And it does feel like that. The nature of the events is ridiculous, and it reminds me of those childhood stories, those imaginations, and also the fact that there are horrifying things in there. People might not realise this unless you work closely with children, but they can have some really disturbing ideas, more so than I would say some adults even. Like they can really surprise you. And the tone is inconsistent, and there is something horrifying about this like odd narrative that's going on. And I think a lot of that again reflects childhood and the way that children think about things, the way children imagine things. Um, and you know, some of the fears in the film are also very grounded and very real, and like things that children are scared of. Some of them are more ridiculous, like a witch who will literally use blood magic to ruin your entire family. But yeah, we have obviously like children with adult responsibilities. That is a very real fear, and a thing that a lot of children have to deal with. So we see Alex having to feed his parents, and then also the children in the basement as well. And there's this idea that, you know, it's almost like being a young carer, which is a really difficult responsibility that a lot of children have to deal with, and that's their reality. And it's a challenge for a child to have that much responsibility. But yeah, of course, some of the fears are more ridiculous and over the top. So that was just my kind of reading of it. It reflected to me a lot of childhood fears. And if you want to know my personal, what I found the worst about it was being a teacher, seeing Justine's storyline. That for me was particularly unpleasant. I'm sure most teachers have been in a situation where they feel got at, or they feel potentially that they're seen as the bad guy when they're just trying to do their best by the kids that they have, but maybe in actions like misinterpreted or something. So that's also like an interesting perspective. I think all the characters brought interesting perspectives, to be fair. But yeah, I think just in terms of, if we're reading it metaphorically, I think it's most consistent with this idea of childhood and the terror of childhood. So that was my personal reading. Totally fine if you disagree. I just think it's quite interesting to have these conversations and unpick films and try and see things in a different light to how they were intended, first of all, like Creggers' intentions, but also how other people are reading it and, you know, put your own spin on things. So there you go. Thank you very much.
Hey! Help me! Help me! Someone please help me!